We should test these microphones. Yeah, this is working now. 1 minute warning, folks.
Test, yeah.
It's 6 o'clock, so we're going to call this meeting to order. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. Everyone please stand for the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, a true north, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Lord, keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Please be seated. Our first motion is approval of the agenda, and it's moved by Susan Irwin, seconded by Dan Meeks, that the agenda be amended to include 2 additional matters in section 19 under closed session, and that the agenda for the regular meeting of council to be held June 24th, 2025 be approved as amended. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure pecuniary interest or general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council? Seeing none, we'll note that in the minutes. Motion moved by Dan Meeks, seconded by Bill Everett, that the minutes from the regular meeting of council held on June the 10th, 2025 be approved as presented. Any amendments? Seeing none, Susan?
There was a minor correction required to, under Mayor's remarks about the dedication for Rural Frontenac Community Services 50th anniversary. It refers to a bench for Audrey Tarasak and Keith Comboy. The bench was for Audrey Tarasak. A tree was recognizing Keith Comboy.
Okay, so as amended. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Mayor's remarks, I'm going to keep them short because we have a heavy agenda. Friday is Dr. Bell's retirement after 54 years. So as many of us can get there, please do. 4 to 7, cookies and lemonade. If it rains, it's going to be at the Catholic Church Hall, but that call will be made probably on Thursday, seeing what the weather is going to be. And Canada Day is just around the corner. Now that this heat wave is gone, hopefully it'll be a pleasant day and we're not going to sweat. I think the prediction is about 22, 24 degrees, so that's good. And other than that, does anybody have anything to add? Susan?
The opening of the Charlotte Lake Farmers Market is on Saturday. And everybody's to wear red and white.
There we go. Anything else? Cindy?
I just wanted to let everyone know I went to the Rocking the Trails in Tweed for the Ride for Dad, and it's through the EOTA. We had over 1,100 bikes that were on the trails. It was a great event. So far this year, they've raised over $43 million for the Ride for Dad for prostate cancer. So it was a really good event. Everyone missed a good time.
Good. All right. If there's nothing else, we will go to delegations. And our first delegation is Frontenac OPP detachment updates. Staff Sergeant Scott Underhill is with us. Come on up, Scott. And Scott is the detachment commander. Welcome to the table.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just going to focus on a lot of the highlight sections that we've identified through the report. I don't know if the report's been shared or not, but I think it has. So just walking you through some of the statistics that we use to gather all the information. I'm just going to quickly go through the report and again highlight the positive areas and touch on some of the areas that we can work to improve. So we're talking about criminal code and provincial charges laid. We're close to where we were last year. Last year, we're between January 2024 and June 2024 compared to this year, comparing it to 24 to 25. This year, we've laid 144 charges in relation to non-traffic related criminal code charges and traffic charges. Highway Traffic Act, there's been an increase of 13% in Highway Traffic Act charges in the area to do with criminal code and provincial statute charges laid. Traffic related charges were up. Seatbelt charges are up 133% this year compared to last year during the same period. We've started to work a little harder at enforcing traffic within all counties within the Frontenac. Clearance rates are trending in the right direction. Comparative to last year, we're at a 55% increase and a 55% change in the clearance rates. So clearance rates speak to investigations that we've resolved and we've solved. Some of them remain unsolved, but as far as clearing them, we're at a 55% increase in Central Frontenac. Motor vehicle collisions, we've had 0 fatalities. I'm happy to report that this year. Last year, during this period, we had 1. Non-fatality, we've had 4 collisions this year. Property damage collisions, which are specific to just minor collisions, whether it be animal related or not, we've had a 43% decrease in those this time compared to last year. Moving on to public complaints, we've had 0 public complaints in Central Frontenac's area, which is always a positive step in the right direction. Compared to last year, we also had the same. So I'm happy to say that we're managing that in a good fashion. Moving to Mental Health Act occurrences. So just touching on the Mental Health Act a little bit, obviously many of the calls that we deal with involve mental health related calls for service. Last year in this period, we responded to 43 calls. This year, that's decreased a little bit to 33 calls for service. And they vary on the type of call. So whether it be an assault and a Mental Health Act call, a domestic type incident, when we determine that there's mental health concerns, that's identified and classified. Other crimes, again, trending in the right direction, were actually increased in other crimes. One other crime area, last year 55%, this year 33%. So again, that looks positive. Drug-related incidents, year to date, we've had 1 last year and 0 this year. So we've had no overdoses and no drug-related overdoses in Central Frontenac during this same period as last year. Property crime is always a big one in the rural areas. We've had 0 arsons this year. We've had 9 break-and-enters, so that's down from last year about 18%. When you look at theft over 5,000, it's the same as last year. We've had 5. Theft under 5,000, last year we had 12. This year we've had 4. Mischiefs, we've had 4 this year compared to 9 last year. It's also important to note back to just backing up to the mental health related calls. We have a worker in our office, an MCERT worker. She's a mental health worker that works directly with our officers. we've actually applied for a grant this year, and that will be taking place. So we're going to be adding a second mental health worker to the office, which is a big win for us and for the communities. Obviously, many, as I indicated, many calls for service that we deal with have to do with mental health related incidents, and they have some great contacts. In many cases, what used to happen is we would be apprehending people and taking them to the hospital. Now we have the ability to have somebody that attends the calls with us and can actually get members hooked up with resources right away, therefore lessening the amount of people that we're apprehending and taking to the hospital. Referrals to victim services. Again, that's something that we work hard at in the offices, ensuring that we're making the right referrals so that people can get the right contacts and right services that they need. This year we've made 72 referrals. The concerning part about that is only 22 of those referrals were accepted. So in many cases, we're offering the referrals and people aren't taking us up on it or actually following up with the appointments and the resources that we've provided to them. So that continues to be something that we work on. And again, the additional MCERT worker will be able to help in that, with hopefully increasing that over the next period. And lastly, e-ticket warnings. So again, traffic has been a focus for the last, I would say the last 4 or 5 months, recognizing that we have a lot of collisions, we have a lot of traffic issues. So what we do using our analytics and our intelligence unit is we identify hotspots in our areas, and we focus completing ride programs in those areas and speeding enforcement in those areas. So out of the charges that have been laid, there's a significant increase, but there's also a significant increase in warnings. So often people aren't given a ticket, and that's officer discretion, and often they're warned. So we've had an 86% increase in the amount of warnings that's gone out. Now that seems like a high number, but again, I think that many people can learn from just having a conversation with the officers as opposed to laying tickets. So that kind of wraps up oversight of the review of the report, and certainly open to any questions.
Okay, questions or comments? Duncan?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I get a lot of complaints about speed in the village of Charlotte Lake. I see your officers out there on a regular basis, and I think they are doing a good job at reducing that. Is there anything we as a municipality could be doing better to help reduce the speed in our downtown?
I mean, there's always things that people can do to help us work towards improving that. I think signage is a big opportunity, a big plus. And I'm not talking about, signage in relation to cameras or anything like that, but often I drive through areas, and often we drive through areas where they'll have a sign up, and I've seen some of them on the way up here. Your speed is actually this. And you actually, in most cases, when you see that, most people actually hit the brakes and slow down. Just stuff like that. And also education, right? Education is huge. And I do believe, this is us, but getting out and doing the ride programs and just providing education is something that we need to continue to do for sure.
Good. Anyone else? Nikki?
Thank you.
Certainly. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. So firstly, auxiliary unit. I will say our auxiliary unit is awesome out of Frontenac. We have 7 members that are very, very dedicated. They're out at many events, and they're only required to put in 10 hours as part of their requirement from the OPP. But we often see them out doing ride-alongs and doing community events on a very regular basis. Most often, when you look at East Region, we're always in the top 3 of the amount of hours that are used by the auxiliaries across East Region. So very proud of that. And they're very, I mean, I can't say enough, but they're very dedicated. They're a great support to us and also great support to the community. And then in relation to the second question, the SAVE unit, I personally haven't seen any changes, to be fair, but I haven't delved into that too much. We rely on our save unit to be out and enforcing, doing enforcement on the trails and roadways. So that's kind of what we mostly rely on. We do have 2 ATVs in our office, and we try to get officers out on those when we can. Most often those are utilized for missing persons, those kind of events. Obviously, the parade, they were used and stuff like that. But yeah, it's something. Again, our save unit, that's the main focus for what they do. If that answers your question, probably not as good as it could be, but
Cindy.
I just want to thank Staff Sergeant Underhill for coming and doing his presentation. I've been on the board now with him for a little bit since we started, and he's kind enough to answer all our questions, and we have a lot of them. So I would just like to thank you very much for coming.
no problem. Thank you.
Anyone else? Nothing else? Thank you very much. And this is going to be a yearly thing. Too bad we didn't get the slides up for the audience, but if you go on the website, you can get the whole package and the stats are there. But I have a motion before you leave the table. I had to borrow glasses because I forgot mine. They're a little big, but they work. Moved by Duncan McGregor, seconded by Nikki Gowd. That council received the presentation from Staff Sergeant Scott Underhill, Detachment Commander, regarding the Frontenac OPP detachment update for information. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Scott.
And if I may just say, if there's anything different that you want in the presentation going forward, if you can mention that to or bring that to my attention before, I can obviously address some of those concerns.
Okay, excellent.
Great.
Have a good summer. All right, our next presentation is Steve Litchie from Capital Park Consulting. And we have the review that's been done in our packages. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
We
I
do
have
have
to be-
your presentation up here, so we can.
Well, I have to begin by apologizing. The air conditioning is not doing any favors to my voice. Maybe the good news is I won't speak as long. You can go to the agenda, please. You'll notice I'm not going to go through the report in detail. I do want to discuss the benchmark survey and the stakeholder engagement just briefly to highlight some points and to focus primarily on the issues to address moving forward. The main objective of this report and this presentation is to have a consensus of what the issues are that we need to address in the next phase, the recommendations. Next slide, please. The benchmark survey, there's some limitations with it. We're fairly pleased with what we got back, but there are some limitations. We invited 22 municipalities to respond. We tried to pick ones that were similar to Central Frontenac for the most part. 17 of the 22 responded, which we think was pretty good. And of the 17, it was practically always filled out by the CAO. So you're getting the opinion from the top person in the township. Having said that, though, it doesn't mean that what other townships or municipalities are doing is perfect. It's not one size fits all, but it is useful information to see how Central Frontenac relates to comparable municipalities. The next slide has the population, which you would think would be fairly easy. But if you start with the column that says permanent residents, we found most respondents used the population from the 2021 census. Not everyone. Some adjusted it. They probably have data as to what the growth has been, and occasionally it was rounded off. We chose not to make any changes to the information we received because if they submitted it and we start changing things like where do you stop and how do you know you're fixing it and not making it worse. The second column we have more concerns about. That's the number of seasonal residents. If you look at Central Frontenac, you told us exactly how many you think you have, but you'll see quite a few of the municipalities, particularly the larger ones, it's a very round figure, which suggests that they estimated. And we also suspect that when they estimated, they may have tended to estimate a little bit on the high side rather than the low side. So treat this with some caution, but it still is some useful data. One thing that struck out to us is When we selected the 22, we tried to pick ones that would have Central Frontenac in the middle. And you ended up actually in the lower half because we underestimated how many seasonal residents there are in some of these municipalities. And it's likely that there are others that might be reading some of your documents, like funding agencies, that may not appreciate the impact that seasonal residents have on a township like Central Frontenac. So something to keep in mind when you're writing grants or applying for some money, make sure people know how many people you actually serve. Next slide, please. We heard that you have the highest taxes in Frontenac County. We're not sure how that was calculated, and we're not disputing it, but we found when we compared you to these other 20 or 17 municipalities, your operating budget was just under 9% higher than the average. But the geographic area that you cover is 44% larger, so you have more roads. That being said, we don't think that your taxes are unreasonable. They're right in line. And like I mentioned a minute ago, we're not convinced that some of the population figures are as high in seasonal residents as we were told. The bottom part of that slide is a bit embarrassing. We relied on the data in the survey, which showed that your taxes per household were remarkably low. So as I was putting together this presentation, I checked it because it seemed awfully low. And I realized that some of the larger population municipalities, they took the census data for permanent residents and the census data for households, but then they included a different figure for the seasonal residents. So they've understated their households. So we're not going to reissue this report, but just so you know, when we do the amalgamated report, the final report, we're going to remove that column from the table and all references to household data because we can't rely on it. My apologies for not catching that earlier. Next slide, please. We asked the municipalities, how do you deliver each of these services that are listed on the left side of that table? And often you see that quite often they have more than one delivery method for a service. Like for example, the road maintenance, surprisingly, there's one that contracts it out totally, but most municipalities do that in-house. Oh, by the way, we did not include Central Frontenac in these figures, but we should put an asterisk where Central Frontenac is so that you know for roads, it's all done in-house. So you can go down the list, you can see what is done in-house and what's a few things that are not offered, like economic development. And I realize the next speakers will have something to say about economic development. You'll see that it's fairly common to have a shared service, some done at a larger level, typically the county, and some done at the local level. And like I said, there is no one size fits all, there's no perfect solution. And sometimes you will try something that you think will work. You tried that with bylaw enforcement officer, outsourcing that. When it didn't work, you brought it back in-house, which seems to be working better. So one solution that may work this year may not work as well a few years down the road. Next slide, please. We ask the respondents, and this would be the CAOs, what changes have you made or are you making for service delivery? And the ones that answered were fairly consistent in what they're doing. They're looking for digital modernization. And that's also something that came up that needs to happen in Central Frontenac. And remote service accessibility. By that, they mean be able to do things virtually. And this is a dilemma for municipalities that have a lot of seasonal residents. They want to be able to do things remotely. If they're not here and they're living, in Toronto or Ottawa or wherever, they want to be able to do their municipal business online. You probably have many residents, though, here that have been longtime residents that either don't have reliable internet service or they like the old-fashioned way. So you have to deliver it both ways, which makes it in many ways more difficult than a lot of other municipalities that only have to do it one. There's a willingness to embrace external expertise. The previous slide showed that there are shared services, there's contracting out, there are other ways of doing things. I think municipalities are looking for the best way, getting the biggest bang for the buck. And there's growing interest in collaboration and shared services. There's a lot of service delivery reviews that you'll read for Frontenac County or done before for Central Frontenac or done for other counties in Eastern Ontario. And they talk a lot about shared services and collaboration, and that is good. We agree with all of that, but we also recognize that it's sometimes easier said than done. We see situations where 3 or 4 local lower tier municipalities are in favor of shared services, but you have one holdout. And so you can't really get there. Other situations where you have something negotiated and you have an election and there's a new council, or you have a retirement and there's a new CAO, and what had been working suddenly doesn't work anymore. So it's good, and we're seeing a growing trend that people would like to see more of this, but it's not always easy to do. The next slide, please. Sometimes when we do a survey, we get answers and we're not really sure what it's trying to tell us. This question, it was absolutely clear what the CAOs were telling us. When we asked them to name the 5 greatest external pressures they're facing right now, they didn't just name the same 5, they named them in the same order. Number 1 external pressure is legislative changes and governance reforms. And you're seeing that across Ontario and across Canada. Very few that didn't have that number 1 had it number 2. Number 2, economic conditions and affordability pressures. Practically everyone had that number 2 that didn't have it number 1. And number 3, 4, and 5, in that order, very strongly, workforce pressures with recruitment, retention, and retirement, demographic shifts and social expectations, infrastructure, housing, and environmental pressures. I don't think any of those 5 are a shock to you. You probably face them every time you get involved in council business. Next slide, please. Just as there are limitations on the benchmark survey, there are some limitations on what came out of the staff input, and dare I say, out of the interviews with managers and the interviews with council. For the staff survey, we only had 50% that participated, although we also had a staff meeting in this hall, and this hall was full. I think we were pretty close to 100% attendance. It was quite impressive. I'd also like to say that even though they came up with things that can be done better, I was impressed at how constructive, how positive the meeting was. It wasn't so much a whining or another word session. It was, there are things we can get better at, but it was intended and taken as constructive criticism. We have quoted some comments in the report. Keep in mind, those are individual comments that came out of the survey. They're not that it was a consensus at a meeting or something like that. So just like with the benchmark survey, it's useful data, it's useful information, but don't rely totally on everything. There are some limitations. Next slide, please. This table we found quite interesting. We asked the staff in the online survey about 5 criteria for how they deliver their services: the quality of service, the timeliness, the responsiveness, the accessibility, and the value for money. And we ask it to rank it from unsatisfactory up to exceptional. The last column, the weighted average, if every respondent had said it was exceptional, it would have got a 5.0. If every respondent rated it as unsatisfactory, it would have got a 1.0. So if you're middle of the road, you're going to get around a 3. You see an awful lot of numbers there that are around a 3. So it meets expectations, but it could be better. What we thought was particularly interesting is the one that ranked the lowest, value for money, 2.85. Not awful, but it's interesting that staff would see that they can do better. And I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes. They gave some reasons why they think the township could improve on this. Next slide, please. Talked a minute ago about sometimes a survey tells you something very clearly and other times you don't know what it means. This is one I don't know what it means. 45% of your staff said they don't have enough staff in their department. 45% said they do. And it wasn't divided by departments. So, now, 10% aren't sure. Next slide, please. I want to thank each of you for the time you took, not only for the interview, but for the time that you spent preparing for the interview. What was interesting is there were very few differences of opinion. There wasn't necessarily a consensus, and you didn't all raise the same issues, but by and large, you're very, very much aligned between council and staff. Now, there was one theme that came through from the council interviews. You would like management to be more strategic. Spend more time thinking strategically, managing and directing, and less time on operational issues. An interesting management would like council to be less involved in operational issues. I don't think that's surprising any of you. I think you've had some discussions about this. But it's interesting that I heard several times, everyone is a good person. Everyone has the right values. We're all trying to do the best for the residents, but we sometimes clash over some things. So the next slide is something you may be familiar with. It's the term accidental adversaries. It's from Peter Senge, who's written a number of best-selling books. And he talks about the fact that sometimes with the best of intentions, we create friction. And he goes through the cycle that you start out with a cooperative relationship. You want the same things. But then something happens. An action is taken or something is said which leads to a misunderstanding, and it unintentionally harms the other. And then so that a negative feedback loop results, and it just sort of spirals. I'm going to give you two examples which I think you can relate to. Have you ever getting ready to go out with your spouse, and your spouse looks at you and says, "Is that what you're wearing?" Now, is that a question? Or is it a statement? Or is it a command? It could be a question, because my wife may look at me wearing blue jeans and say, "Is that what you're wearing?" Because she's not sure whether it's formal or informal or casual or what it is. And before she gets ready, she wants to make sure I'm not going to change into a suit. On the other hand, usually when she asks me if that's what you're wearing, it's a statement that doesn't look appropriate. And sometimes it's a command, go change into something else. But you understand, like, the same wording can be taken three different ways. Some are fine, they're positive, and others not so much. So one of the examples we were given about staff that's saying we're not getting value for money is Public Works, they're grading 12 kilometers of road. And it has to be graded that day because you're putting calcium down the next day. It has to be done. But they're driving by another road that needs to be graded badly. They're right there with the road grader. So the question comes through, are you going to grade that road that you're driving by with the grader? Is that a question? Is that a statement? Is it a command? Because the operator is thinking, I have to get this 12 kilometers done. It's time sensitive. But they're interpreting that question as a command, grade the other road. And so to grade the other road. And they gave a number of examples that were similar to that, where it could have been a question, it could have been a statement, it could have been a command. But it's a textbook example of the accidental adversaries. Communication is very, very difficult. Every engagement survey that's ever been done usually has communication at the top, practically always in the top three. But it's something which, if everyone is working on it, and part of that is empowering the staff who are grading that road to say, no, we're not doing that road and this is why. And there's an understanding, okay, that makes sense. Next slide, please. I've spent most of this presentation talking about all the things that could be done better. So I have one slide that's positive. Don't lose sight of the fact that when you did your online survey for residents in 2023, so less than 2 years ago, and we asked specifically about their satisfaction with municipal services, 80% were satisfied or very satisfied. So that's good. The other thing, which you may not be as familiar with, is management recently did an employee engagement survey, and the fire department does employee engagement surveys. They're consistently showing that you have a high level of employee engagement, which is also very good. And I think that's consistent with the positive tone at the staff meeting and the fact that they're going to come up with some ideas about how they can give you better value for money. And finally, your taxes are not out of line. You may be told that they're the highest in the county, but they're not out of line considering the situation that you're in. You match up, quite reasonably with other municipalities. So now back to the work that needs to be done. We organize these in 5 different headings, and I'll go through each of these in turn. So we'll start with the staffing and organizational capacity. There's a consensus that the workload for the CAO is too much. And particularly in the fact that it doesn't give the CAO enough time to focus on the higher level things. There's just too many day-to-day things that have to be attended to. And coupled with the workload being too heavy, and maybe part of it is the span of control. There are too many direct reports to the CAO. We're also told that the CBO, the Chief Building Official, and his department are stretched. There's a backlog in permits that need to be addressed. He's also responsible for the septic system reinspection, which is not functioning as well as it could, and there's a backlog and no time to do the follow-up and the monitoring. The internal structure in Public Works needs to be addressed. One of the things that they'd like to see happen is separating the waste management from the road maintenance. But in general, there are a number of things to look at there. There was some concern about the clarity and effectiveness of support staff roles. A lot of people said they're good people. When I see them, they're working hard, but I'm not quite sure what they do. So that may, again, just be communication, but it's clarification that's needed. And finally, and this may be more perception than reality, but ensuring fairness and competitiveness in compensation and workloads. So these are some of the things we want to address under staff and organizational capacity. Unfortunately, they spilled onto the next slide. We have listed here potential capacity gaps in functional areas. And I want to stress that they're functional areas. That doesn't mean we're going to recommend that you hire a person for every one of these. Some of them can be combined. Some of them can probably be looked after by staff you already have. Some you might want to have shared or outsourced or whatever. But these are gaps that we're going to look at how you could fill them. And we'll start with the asset management, which I know there was already a request from staff to hire an asset management professional. When we did some of our previous work municipalities, particularly the strategic plan, we saw such a wide range of how assets were managed in municipalities just like you. I won't talk about the poor examples, but I'll give you the example we thought was the best. And you may be wondering why Perth South was in the list of comparable municipalities, because they are the least like you. When I say Perth South, it's southwestern Ontario. It's Perth County. They are adjacent to Stratford. So they're a different part of the province. They have no seasonal residents. It's very much an agricultural community. They are one of the few municipalities that have a declining population, because as you know, you used to drive down the road and every 100 acres was a different farm family. Now you measure farms in thousands of acres, not hundreds. So as they have larger farms, they have fewer people. And they have a lot of roads to maintain. They have no settlement areas to speak of. The largest one is about 100 people. They do a very good job of maintaining their roads. They're quite proud of the fact that their roads are better than any of their neighbors. But what impressed us is the way they manage their vehicles. We look at councils when they come to budget time, and it's sort of like going through the couch cushions looking for change. There's not a whole lot in your operating budgets. And the more times you go through your couch, the less money you get each time you go through it. There's a lot more money to be saved if you look at your capital budgets. And you probably have seen that recently with what's happened with your fire department, whereby if you have someone who's qualified and has the time, they can make some very substantial savings in astute purchases of used equipment. What Perth South did is they had extremely good data on the cost of each of their vehicles. And they found that, and don't quote me on the year, I think it was about the 7th year of operation with their trucks, there was a big spike in the maintenance. And they said all of our trucks had the same workload, so it was quite consistent. It was year 7 that we had quite a bit more than what we had in the first 6 years. That sort of makes sense when you think about it, changing fluids and timing chains and that type of thing. So the first inclination was, we'll trade our trucks in after year 6 and avoid this. But they had enough data that they looked at, they realized once we get by year 7, the maintenance costs drop right back down to what they were before for years 8, 9, 10, 11. And those are actually the most cost-effective years for us to have those trucks because they're fully depreciated and the maintenance costs are basically the same as a new truck. So we had other clients that were doing the opposite. They were trading them in they were trading them in year 6. But if you have the data and you have someone who can take the time to find that data, to do the analysis, there's a lot of money that can be saved in your capital. They'd also gone through it with the road graders and realized there comes a time where if they wanted to refurbish a road grader, it might cost them several $100,000, but it was still only like 30% of the cost of a new road grader, and it was as good as new. So we are going to strongly recommend that you follow through with getting someone who's going to have the expertise and the time to look after asset management. And you've already come up with some of the other asset management issues in terms of the, I believe you have 122 surplus properties that are up for sale now. Once you sell them, you'll start getting tax revenue. When they're just sitting in your inventory, they're there, but they're not doing you any good. So there are other things to look at, and this is going to be one of the key ones. The other thing that was asked for is someone to look after procurement. As a consulting firm, we write a lot of responses to requests for proposals, and we see a wide variation in the quality of how those RFPs are put out. We highly recommend getting someone who can centralize that. You'll get a better quality RFP, which will save you money. And it's also, if a manager is only writing 1 or 2 requests for a proposal or quotation a year, they aren't going to be very efficient at it. So it's going to take them a long time. That's time that would be better spent on other things. So having that centralized and having someone with the expertise and the time is going to be a much more effective way to deliver the service. Economic development, as I mentioned earlier, that's typically shared, and I believe the next speakers are going to talk to you about what's happening at the county level. But it came up, particularly with council members, they'd like to see more done at the local level as well. And I don't think that was intended to replace the county, but just to see a higher profile of economic development, working with the Economic Development Committee. Grant research and proposal development. You rely on grants a great deal, and that's closely connected with intergovernmental relations. And there was a suggestion made that you wanted a senior person who could work essentially exclusively on intergovernmental relations, which is something to consider. Getting back to what the 5 biggest external pressures are, number 1 was government policy changes, legislation changes. Planning and development services, I believe you've tried to hire someone in that and it was a failed search, but it's something which appears to be lacking, especially when you look at some of the policy changes that are happening both federally and provincially. It's something you probably want to strengthen your capabilities. Human resources is interesting. A lot of municipalities they're not large enough. They don't have enough staff to justify someone in that role. They tend to give it to the CAO. And the issue with that is the CAO is always going to be reactive because there's so many other things to do that they're not going to worry about too many HR things until there's a problem that you have to deal with. So it'd be worthwhile looking at what can you do and possibly, again, a shared service with another municipality. And finally, digital transformation. I found it interesting that 3 municipalities have hired someone who is a combination of a human resource specialist and digital transformation specialist so that they can, because they are related. There's a 4th municipality that has married digital transformation with IT. So there are different ways to do it. Next slide. Governance and role clarity. I've already talked about this quite a bit, so I'm not going to go through it again. Other than the last bullet, review the mandate and the effectiveness of township committees. There's some committees are advisory. They make recommendations to council. They don't make decisions. There is a perception that may not be understood fully. So it would be timely to review both the mandate and the operations of the committees to make sure that their role is understood. They're a valuable resource for the township, but they're not the decision makers. That's why you guys get paid the big bucks. Service delivery efficiency. Already talked about asset management. Already talked about digital transformation. enhancing the use of existing technology. You have a number of programs that are not used to their fullest. And a lot of that is the fact that staff don't have the time to really do it. Citywide is a very powerful program. I'm not an expert in it, but I know that our clients that use it are very, very happy with it. It has more capacity, more capability than what you're using it for, and it'd be worthwhile using it to its fullest extent. Improving value for money. Do a quick digression here. One of the most successful organizations that we're all familiar with is McDonald's restaurants. The reason McDonald's became so successful is they were very, very adept at harnessing the suggestions made by their lower level staff. To give you an example, some of you may be of an age where you remember going into McDonald's and the menu was static. It was just a regular sign behind the counter. And the staff at the counter said to their managers, you know, I know the menu says that breakfast is available to 11 and then after that it's lunch. But people come in every day at 11:15, can I get a Big Mac? And we have to explain to them no, and they're not very happy. And then someone comes in a quarter after 11 and wants breakfast, and we have to say no, and they're not very happy. Get rid of the static board and put up a digital one, and so you only have the breakfast menu on up until 11, and then it flips over to the lunch menu. We won't have this confrontation with customers. And soon they found that they could do all kinds of other things with those digital boards. Sometimes I think I'm watching a full feature film when I go in there with the advertising, but if you ever do a case study of McDonald's, there are literally dozens of ideas that their staff came up with that put McDonald's ahead of all the other fast food franchises. So staff have some good ideas. They won't all be winners, but a lot of them will be. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go through this again. These were the 5 external pressures, but as we're coming up with the recommendations, the question we'll be asking, and you as council should be asking, how is this going to prepare us to respond to these pressures? Next slide. And last, but definitely not least, how can we engage our residents and communicate with our residents better? The Voyant Alert program, it was quite impressive how many of the interviewees mentioned it and what a great innovation it was. You know, it's interesting. It's not a mandatory service, but what you're spending on it is well worth the money. It has certainly improved resident satisfaction, and it's made life much easier for your staff. There are probably a few other things that you could do along that line that we'll include in the next report. And so finally, Hofstadter's Law. Is everyone familiar with Hofstadter's Law? It always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's Law. There is the possibility that you may have a retirement at a senior level in the next little while. And if you're looking for a new leader or the township staff, how long will it take to recruit someone? When you ask people, they'll typically say 4 to 6 months. And in theory, you can do it in 4 to 6 months. If you just write down, well, these are the academic qualifications and the years of experience, and you post that and you gather applications for 6 to 8 weeks, and then you do interviews and you check references and make an offer, and all goes well that you get the candidate on the first try, yeah, you can do it in 6 months or less. Hofstadter's Law said it's going to take longer than that, and Hofstadter's actually quite right. One of the things which you'd like to draw to your attention, if you are going to recruit a new CAO, you should probably plan for about a year. And what you need to do in the first few months, especially when you've had someone in that role for many years, is as a council, spend some time working out what exactly is it that we're looking for. Because it's not just years of experience, and it's not just the academic qualifications. I'll give you some examples. We had a client that was a college that were recruiting a new president. And when the board was talking about what they wanted in the new president, the point was made that when we hired the president we have right now, we were really concerned about internal issues. We were worried about the way the financial management was going on. We didn't like our policies and procedures. We were being told that our curriculum was outdated. Staff weren't particularly engaged. We really wanted a president who could focus on internal issues and deal with them. And that's who we hired, and we've been very happy with what they've done. But now we look at it and we say, internally, everything's going great. we'd like our next president to be externally focused, that we want them to raise our profile in the community so we get more students and contract training opportunities. We'd like them to talk with universities about setting up linkages so that our graduates with a diploma can use that to ladder up to a degree. We want them to get involved in research, so talk with government, talk with other research partners about what we can do. So we want, although we were very happy with the president who was internally focused, now we want one who's externally focused. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just, where are you at this point in time? What are you looking for? I don't know how many of you are sports fans, but when a professional team needs a new coach or a new manager, they look at, where are we as a team? Do we have a lot of young players where we want a coach who's good at developing young players? Are we a veteran team? Are we a team that is very poor defensively and we want a coach who's going to focus on that? So what is your need right now? And spend the time figuring out what it is that you're going to want, because this is a chance to figure out exactly what you need and make sure you get the right candidate. And here's the bad news. You can't delegate this. The only employee that council has is a CAO. You as a council have to work out what it is that you want. And I'm also looking now on June the 24th, you're going to meet once in July and once in August. If you wait till September to start this, you may be running out of time. At the other end of the recruitment process, having some overlap is a good thing. Occasionally you see an organization says, well, if we have a gap, we save some money. It's penny saved and hundreds of thousands of dollars wasted. It's actually a good thing to have some overlap for a couple of reasons. One is there's the knowledge transfer from the incumbent, the newcomer. The other is you'll typically find that when a CAO is retiring, there's a couple of projects they wanted to finish off that they never had time. But when there's that overlap, they can spend those last 4, 6, 8 weeks finishing off those projects while they're there to help with the orientation of the newcomer. So by the way, this graphic below, I originally thought that was an exaggeration, that the actual time shouldn't be that much more than the worst case estimate. But then I talked with people who have done kitchen renovations and they told me it's accurate. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for your attention.
And no one is sleeping, I want you to know. Questions or comments? Lots to think about, lots of things to plan for.
We'll discuss it.
And this is a plan that's not going to be put on a shelf, and we need to work it to make it where we want it to go. So this is just the beginning. We've got many more times to look at it. Duncan.
Yeah, a lot to take in. When you look at the recommendation portion of the plan, how long until you have a draft recommendations for us?
I'm hoping to be here. You only have one meeting in July?
Yes.
We're hoping to be here at that meeting.
Okay. But that won't be the final report.
That will be the draft final.
The draft final. Okay.
The final then would come in at the August meeting.
Okay. All right. If there aren't any more, oh, glasses aren't up there. I have a motion. And the motion is moved by Nikki, seconded by Duncan, that council receive for information the update regarding the organizational and service delivery review as presented by Steve Litchkeep, Capital Park Consulting. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Steve. Well done. And last but not least, Frontenac County Economic Development Update by Richard Allen. And Deb is with him.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for allowing us to join you today. And yes, I've brought Debbie Miller, my colleague in economic development at Frontenac County, with me. We weren't sure because she was on holiday and she thought she might stay on holiday a little longer, but she just knew that getting out in the heat in Central Frontenac was the right thing to do today. So. And speaking of holidays and how things feel, We'd like to start our presentation briefly with a video presentation for council. We've spent a couple of years building an exciting video that speaks to the character of Frontenac County, and we'd just like to share that with you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And we've been using this video to promote our region for the last 2 months on social media. We've partnered with our regional tourism organizations, RTO 9 in southeastern Ontario that covers Frontenac Islands and South Frontenac, and RTO 11, Ontario's Highlands, that covers Central Frontenac and North Frontenac, on a set of campaigns to promote and extend the audiences beyond those social media audiences that the county or the townships have to other parts of Ontario, Canada, and further. We even were able to bring Destination Ontario into the mix, and their audience is so huge that within a week, they were able to garner almost 10,000 views of that video on social media. So it got the word out, and we continue to post that video in various forms and formats over the course of the summer. To talk a little bit more about what we're doing in terms of business development and promoting the region, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Debbie.
Thank you. And just to expand a little bit on some of the work we're doing with the regional tourism organizations, we've also been building out some itineraries that both RTOs, for short form, sorry, I'll try not to use acronyms, but RTO, so both of them are building out itineraries to share across social media through the summer. So itineraries being a highlight of businesses and things like that, places people can visit, and sharing those. There's also working with them on some contesting, working with them also on the Ride the Highlands program as well, which is motorcycle routes. So a few different projects happening with the regional tourism organizations. Just going through this annual report, I'm just going to highlight a couple of things through here. Just to draw attention to. The other project that I've spent a lot of time on in the last year is healthcare. I a year and a half ago knew nothing about healthcare, but I know quite a bit more now. I wouldn't say I'm a pro in it, but I know a lot more than I did then. We started by doing an operational review with the 4 clinics across Frontenac County. We worked with Rob Wood and did the operational review. We thought there would be one thing across the 4 clinics that would be like, oh, they all need this. And that would be like, a quick win. That's not the case. They all have different priorities. Healthcare is ever changing, different structures and things like that. So the operational review, the findings report were presented in March and they were approved at County Council. From there, the recommendation was to develop an implementation plan for the healthcare in our community. So I did bring that back to County Council in May and that was approved there as well. So I've got lots of projects and things on the go, working with the consultant, continuing to work with a consultant on some of those things. So there's some outputs that will be happening over the next little while. Some of them are, one of them is a working group that we're going to be starting to put a call out for healthcare to get our communities involved in healthcare as well. The intention of the operational review was really to find ways that we can make sure that the clinics are for retention and recruitment, make sure that they are supported from an administrative place, because we've heard very loud and clear that there is a burden, an administrative burden on the clinics. So that was one area. The other thing, bringing the clinics together, they've started to collaborate and they've started to make connections together, and just they've been very, very thankful for the work that's been happening. So that's a big part of what I've been working on this past year. So lots more to happen, but stay tuned and I'll continue to keep you updated there. The other part of the healthcare side is the Eastern Ontario Physician Recruitment Alliance, otherwise known as EOPRA. So I've also been sitting on with that group. There's 16 other municipalities with that, but there's 5 other organizations across the province that are also part of that. The focus with the Recruitment Alliance is really on international and national recruitment. So looking farther afield outside of Canada, and we'll be attending certain events. I'm attending an event in Montreal on recruitment, but there's others from this group that are attending in the UK and the US in different places, so we're represented there as well. So just wanted to share a little bit about that. A couple of other things that I've been working on, the business retreat and awards. So they were held in the fall of 2024 at RKY Camp. We had an afternoon of businesses coming together, sharing, connecting, sharing lots of panel conversations, answering questions. And then we capped it off at the end of the day with the award celebration of 5 recipients across Frontenac County. Again, just to note that the awards are, I love this part of it, where the awards are created by an artist from Frontenac County, and it's their interpretation of the Frontenac brand. So each year we've had a different artist that's created them. So looking forward to that again this year. The retreat will be again at RKY Camp on October 21st. So looking forward to that. Just a couple of other things. I've also been spending time with Frontenac Business Services, going out and visiting businesses in our community, setting up meetings with them to have conversations, to learn more about what they're planning to do, or some things that they have planned, and offering supports or connections for them as well. So each month we're out in a different township, just trying to make our way around different areas. So just visiting, also hosting business networking opportunities. We had one in May at Myers Cave, and we've got one in July. I'll be sending out the invite very shortly, and it's in Central Frontenac, so just down the road. So it's going to be an 8:30 to 10:30 on Tuesday, July 22nd. So mark your calendars. Hopefully you can be there. And I'm just going to wrap it up with Open Farms. So Open Farms moved to be a 6-week initiative, and we've moved back to be a weekend initiative. So it's going to be September 5th, 6th, and 7th, really trying to create a festival-like atmosphere and really trying to focus on that connection with farming and food. So again, just drawing a little bit of attention to that. There's going to be a featured event around the Frontenac plowing match on the Sunday, but lots of things happening around that weekend. So I'm going to leave it there, but happy to answer questions after Richard's finished his part.
Yeah, just to close up, everything we do in our department is guided by the Charter for Economic Development, which we County Council finalized last summer. It has 4 pillars in it, and it's on page 5 of the annual report here. Those pillars that includes tourism, food and beverage, housing, and economic infrastructure. And a lot of what Debbie was just talking about, healthcare, connecting businesses, that's what we consider to be economic infrastructure. Fiber optic cable and internet also, cell service also fits that bill. And so if you have any questions about how we build our business plans or how we develop things, it's often guided by the values or goals set out in the Economic Development Charter. So that will guide us for the next 4 to 5 years. Another small part of my role is the development and management of the Frontenac KMP Trail. And you can see we've included in this report a few updates about projects in and around the trail. We've included trail data. You may look like trail use is going down, but some of that is due to people going back to work after the pandemic. But what we've noticed is that the percentage of individuals who are coming from further away has increased. So we're bringing more tourists to our trails, which is the goal. They have a higher economic impact. We love that our locals love our trails so much as well, and they also have an economic impact, but they don't often stay in hotels. And the other part of that project is the Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop, which is a 360-kilometer loop trail that's formed of the KMP Trail, the Cataraqui Trail, the Ottawa Valley Recreational Trail, and the Algonquin Trail. 98% of it, I think, is off-road, which makes it a very attractive cycling product to cycle tourism. So we're working with our partners in the County of Lanark, the County of Renfrew, the Township of Rideau Lakes, the Town of Smiths Falls, to develop this idea, this route on these connected trails as a signature experience in Eastern Ontario that we can attract visitors to. And there are a number of recommendations associated with that laid out here in the report and on the website associated with this project. But I just want to mention that we'll be reaching out to local businesses in the fall to help connect them to the opportunity and to engage them as we develop that product. Our goal is to start marketing to international audiences by 2030, if not before. And there's a few things we need to do, like increase food and beverage opportunities and accommodation opportunities along the route to support those trail users. The other piece that we did a corner of Central Frontenac. We redeveloped in October last year another 8 kilometers, and that took us out of Central Frontenac and into North Frontenac. That work is all complete to the Mississippi River, and we've also managed to get that all uploaded to Google Street View. So if you feel like it's too hot to be on the trail or there's too many bugs, you can go on Google and you can go and see all the parts of the trail and pretend you're driving your side-by-side until the weather gets more appropriate. If you have any questions about the trail or what we do at Economic Development, we'd be pleased to take them at this stage.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I did hear that we need a bit of calcium down by the Railroad Museum. The dust is coming across the road.
Did you hear that last week or this week?
I heard it just today.
Oh, well, we just laid some yesterday.
Maybe she was thinking it was before yesterday.
Okay.
I'll check. Okay, if there's no questions or comments, I have a motion moved by Duncan McGregor, seconded by Bill Everett, that council receive the information from the Economic Development Update from Richard Allen, Manager of Economic Development, Frontenac County. We didn't put Debbie Miller in there, but we should have. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, there's no public meeting and our consent agenda. Septic reinspection committee minutes. Moved by Bill Everett, seconded by Lynn Clegus, that council receive items A and B for information as they are considered routine items. Duncan.
Just a question. It looks like the minutes for the septic reinspection were from April of 2024. Is that?
Yeah, they were.
Yes, I think it
That's
was.
the most update minutes? Okay.
Yeah, they hadn't, this was the first meeting this year, I believe. No, the second,
Yeah.
second.
Just
Yeah.
now. For 2020.
Yeah,
Whoops. So the septic reinspection committee met on, I believe it's June 18th. You know, time flies when
just a
you're
little
having
while
fun.
ago.
Thereabouts. And I have spoken with Kathy about having the recommendations from that meeting put on our July agenda.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Any deferred items?
No, there are not, Madam Mayor.
Staff reports. We are going to deal with the activity report of the fire department. Moved by Lynn Clegg, seconded by Cindy Kelsey. The council received the Central Frontenac Fire Rescue Activity Report dated June 24th, 2025, as presented by the Manager of Emergency Services / Fire Chief for information. Welcome, Chris. Questions or comments? Nikki? Nikki, pull the microphone down.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy. So I did take a trip to Quebec, as I mentioned, and that vehicle won't work for us. The whole body, the way it's set up, it's not going to be not the way we want it. So I did do some more research, and I have found a possible, actually a better price as well, but it's in the States. It's down north of St. Paul, Minnesota. So I'm in discussion with him right now. I sent him pictures of the Parham's vehicle that's there now for a trade. We're talking probably around 350 US. So I'm not sure about tariffs. I've heard different stories about where that is, but in the long run, this vehicle would be, it's a 2020. It's in excellent shape. It's got 13,000 miles on it. Came from Texas. So I'm thinking that it's probably going to be a good look at it to take a drive down there or fly down. I guess I'll probably fly. It's 18 hours to get there, so probably go down. But just to give one example of it, there's an option there. You can get a galvanized frame. So what that is, it prevents it from rusting. So it's a big plus for up here, right? So there's things like that I'm looking at with this vehicle, and it's a good possibility. So I don't know if council wants me to pursue this, or do I need to wait to do an official report to it? I don't, because I won't know anything till I see it. So if council wants me to go down and look at it, I guess they have to sort of give me the heads up.
What is council's pleasure? Duncan?
Yeah, I think any opportunity we have to purchase a used vehicle where we can kind of make these unique circumstances, yeah, absolutely pursue it.
Can you get a one-way ticket with the hopes of getting a return if you need it?
It's
That
well, I
didn't
did
sound
price
well, did it?
I did price the ticket, and it's an hour and a half from St. Paul to the dealer. And so it's about a $3,000 to $3,200 trip.
Wow.
But for me to drive there, I don't think feasibly that work for us either, right? So, and I'd like to get this sort of, they've agreed that if we are going to pursue this, that they would hold this for the 2026 budget. We would just have to put a non-refundable deposit on it.
Okay, good.
So that's
Well,
my,
It
That's-
sounds like we want to move forward, and
Okay.
maybe we can just find the most economical way to do it.
okay,
Okay?
for sure. Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay, if there's, Nikki, another one?
Yes, please and thank you if that's all right. You talked in your email to me about that you're looking at getting trucks refurbished, which I thought was a great idea, and
Yeah.
I just want you to.
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy. Yes, so part of the answer I gave to Councillor Gowdy is I believe this will be your last big purchase for a while. I plan that the tankers that you have don't roll as often as, as a larger center, that we can refurbish them and that the underwriters will still look at that for your accreditation.
Good.
So one's due next year, 26, in the Charlotte Lake Station. It's not going to cost a lot of money to refurbish them. I'm saying refurbish, I mean, just go over them thoroughly, maybe do a few things to them, but we just identify the frame, how that is and everything else. So I think we can keep those going for another 5 years. So it'd be beneficial to us. And I think underwriters will agree to that.
Good. Makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. All right. All those in favor of the motion? Carried.
Thank you.
Right. And that's it for fire. Accounts payable. Michael.
Madam Mayor, sorry to interrupt. Do we need to do a formal motion for the chief giving him direction to go to St. Paul?
I think not until he's ready to go and come back with some,
Okay.
yeah, when your bags are packed. All right. Accounts payable. Michael. I'm going to read the motion and then you're going to tell us where we're going to get all the money to pay the bills. Moved by Cindy Kelsey, seconded by Susan Irwin, that council received the accounts payable report, check distribution in the amount of $1,113,354.37 as prepared by the treasurer for information. Any discussion?
The good thing is these bills are already paid, so we don't need to find money for them.
Perfect. All right. All those in favor? Carried. Next is property taxes and interest write-offs. Moved by Lynn Clegg, seconded by Bill Everett, that council receive and approve the recommendation of the treasurer to write off all taxes and penalty in the amount of $8,293.88 on roll number 1039-070-020-16350 as authorized per section 354-12A of the Municipal Act. Discussion. There was an explanation of what happened to that property that needs to be fixed.
Through Madam Mayor to Council, it's a property that should never have had taxable assessment on it. Unfortunately, it was started, I'm going to be honest, through the owner's actions. MPAC added it, and since then, maybe I could have sought legal advice a little bit more, but through the tax law process, sometimes things are solved. So I was hoping to solve it that way and recover the costs at the same time.
Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Asset management, moved by Bill Everett, seconded by Duncan McGregor, that council received the asset management plan report and presentation by Sarah Craig from Public Sector Digest for information. Sarah's with us right there.
If I may make an opening statement, Madam Mayor.
Sure.
Just obviously introducing Sarah to council. She has worked tirelessly on this with Aaron and I, and there's another gentleman in the background, but just want to thank her for that because this is pivotal to the services that we deliver to the residents. And if we don't take care of it, then we're in trouble.
Okay.
So thank you, Sarah, for coming out in person as well.
So I'll leave the motion until after. Do you want to do a little presentation? Or is it just the motion? No. Yes.
There is a presentation. I don't know if Chris is going to bring it up, but it was in council's package on the
Yeah.
agenda. If you want to click on it.
I think we've all went through it. Is there questions or highlights that you'd like to talk about?
I was intending to.
Sure, just,
So Sarah was going to go through the presentation. Maybe she can jump over a few things to save council
yeah,
time.
that would be great.
Okay.
Because we all have read the package, right? Okay.
Okay. So we're not gonna show the. Okay. So thank you very much for having me today. Okay. What I wanted to go over today, I'm gonna sort of walk through the regulatory requirements, a little bit of the history, and then I'll hit some high points through your asset management plan for 2025, and then we'll answer any questions after that. In terms of the regulatory context, this all started in 2015 with the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act, where the Ontario government introduced the Ontario Regulation 58817. It required that all municipalities in Ontario create an asset management strategy or policy, and increasing in complexity asset management plans from 2022 through to 2025. As part of our current engagement, we've developed an asset management plan that meets all of the 2025 requirements. There's a really nice chart that goes through, and it just shows what the requirements were for each of the years. So basically for 2022 and 24, you're required to put together your current levels of service, the state of all of your infrastructure, and the costs associated with managing that infrastructure. For 25, the focus was more on proposed levels of service. So in 24, you established your current levels of service. And then in 25, we looked at your infrastructure and your services, and we've made some recommendations and proposed levels. In terms of your infrastructure, the regulation breaks infrastructure down into core and non-core assets. So your core assets, your road network, bridges and culverts, stormwater network. And then your non-core include all the other types of capital assets, vehicles, buildings, machinery and equipment, land improvements. And land improvements, it's always a question, what's included in land improvements? That's your signage, fencing, playground structures, landscaping, boat launches, and other small assets, really. The analysis for the asset management plan was limited to your current infrastructure. We looked at the impacts of growth in general, but it's all about the requirements for your current infrastructure portfolio. Your infrastructure portfolio is worth in 2024 dollars, $286 million. It's not a little bit overwhelming. Your road network makes up the largest portion at $207 million. Bridges and culverts are next at $29.8 million. Buildings are 28.2. Vehicles are next, machinery and equipment. Land improvements are your smallest asset category at $863,000. Overall, your infrastructure portfolio, 71% of your 286, thank you, $1 million, 71% of that is in fair or better condition. That's pretty awesome. Overall, average condition of all of your infrastructure is sitting at good or 64%. It's almost there. There's a chart that just shows, one more. There we go. Thank you. It just shows a breakdown of the condition of each asset category. So red is very poor and green is very good. So there's a lot more green than red. Your infrastructure is in pretty good shape. The next slide. So levels of service, which is the focus of the 25 amp, the majority of the analysis. So to deliver affordable services, it's a balance between the cost, the risk, and your asset performance. And finding that balance, having adequate revenue to support a sustainable asset management program is key. And then determining the right fit for Central Frontenac. This proposed level of service process has allowed municipalities across Ontario to examine what makes the most sense for them. There isn't a one size fits all. So what we looked at was primarily a condition-based analysis. So we determined based on the average condition of your infrastructure, what it would cost to maintain that infrastructure at varying condition levels. I'll get into that a little bit more. If we can go to the next slide, it shows a breakdown of your current levels of service in terms of each asset category, the replacement cost value, and the average condition of each asset category. Oh, no, that's the right slide.
Oh. Did I recall? Sorry. Go back.
Oh, yeah, no, this one. And then it shows the service trend. The service trend is based on the comparison of condition and financial reinvestment year over year. And you can see by the arrows that your services are typically trending downward. But overall, your average condition is good at 64%. So what we did was, next slide, please. Yes. We looked at 4 scenarios. So scenario 1 is your current capital reinvestment. And this scenario takes what you're currently reinvesting in each asset category and projects the average condition into the future. And we actually took the average condition projected to 2055. So 30 years from now, if you continued to invest what you're investing today, what would the condition of your infrastructure be? And then we looked at what it would cost to maintain your infrastructure at a condition of 60%. So it's still good condition, but it's at a target condition of 60%. And then the third scenario is we looked at what it would cost to maintain your infrastructure at a target of 70. So right now you're at 64, so we looked at 60 and 70. And then we looked at your current life cycle activities. So what's built into the citywide system in terms of estimated useful lives of your asset and replacement costs. And we looked at what condition would be maintained if you did everything the system thinks you should do when the system thinks you should do it. And then the next slide is a summary of the results. So scenario 1, which is your current capital reinvestment, so the chart shows your current average condition at 64. And if you maintained your current funding at 2.9 million per year, the projected average condition in 2055 would be poor at 37%. And this summary is across all of your asset categories. So the whole 286 million. So then scenario 2, target of 60% condition. So condition good at 60%. it would cost $5.7 million per year in annual requirements. A target of 70% is $6.99 million. And then based on your life cycle activities that have been identified, scenario 4, it's 7.75 million, and that would maintain your infrastructure on average, at an average condition of 75% by 2055. So it sort of increases in cost and increases in condition. Yep. It's amazing how that works out, right? So what we propose is by targeting scenario 3, which aims to maintain your infrastructure at a condition of 70%, you're setting a prudent financial goal that supports responsible stewardship of your assets, but it also helps to maintain fiscal responsibility. So it's not the gold-plated standard, but it ensures that you've built in sustainable and resilient services. So your assets are in a condition of 70. That helps to reduce maintenance costs. It reduces unplanned outages and improves your service delivery. What that means from a financial perspective. Oh, nice. What we've presented here are scenarios in terms of the impact to your tax revenue. So what this means is if you wanted to reach this, the sustainable level of service proposed at a condition of 70, which is the 6.99 million per year, it would mean a 6.6% increase every year for 5 years. What we're recommending is a 1.6% over the next 20 years, because we didn't get here overnight. So it's not really recommended to fix it overnight. But we do present options that you could reach that level of funding in 10 years or 15 years. But 1.6%. So that would be 1.6% every year compounded and only attributed to capital. It would be in addition to any other increases. So in terms of next steps for the municipality and your asset management program, data improvements are something that is recommended to be ongoing and continue. Staff have done a lot of work to improve the data systems, as well as mirror or model the life cycle expectations of your infrastructure, and inputting in the system condition assessments. That helps to better model how your assets are deteriorating with real in-field assessments. So continuing to make those improvements and align the financial system with your operations so that what's happening in the world is reflected in the system and connected to your financial forecasts and projections. And then the regulation requires that every year you do an annual review and you speak to how the implementation of your asset management plan and proposed levels of service are going, and any factors that are impeding the advancement or the implementation of your asset management plan, and how you're going to address those factors moving forward, as well as another asset management plan in 5 years, so 2030.
All right, questions? It is not a simple process. Duncan?
To echo that statement, yeah, there's a lot of information to take in. You both are, and everyone else who's involved did a great job with this report to try to take as much data as there is out there and try to put it in one report. Really like the report. Not really happy to see where we're at as far as the total cost for assets. That's a pretty big undertaking. My only concern with this entire report is how we're going to pay for these assets over 20 years. And I don't really like just putting a flat 1.6% tax increase. I think it should be looked at again by council in this budget season, especially when we look at this organizational review and service delivery model. There's other ways to deal with our assets other than just a flat 1.6% tax increase. So I think council needs to look at what other options. Can we reduce assets? Can we change our revenue models? And so the only reason I'm against the motion we have on the floor today is just the flat out 1.6% tax increase. I'm not okay with that in June. Other than that, the report is excellent.
To remind Mayor, Councilor McGregor, I don't disagree with you. You can't just keep adding money to things and that be the only answer. We have to look at it from all the different avenues. And I do think, again, to reiterate that asset management procurement position would help with that. The life cycle things that are done, working in conjunction with the department heads, will get that there. And yeah, I mean, look at the assets that we do have living within our means. So yes, you're right. It's not a one solution for fixing everything.
Okay. Nikki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question, and I think is to you, Michael, and it's about clarifying a comment that, so you had a great presentation and it helped me understand better what I read. So you had made a comment just a few moments ago that says the 1.6 is on top of any capital expenditures we're going to make. So like next year we have a bridge that we need to replace.
Thank you. If I may, Madam Mayor, to Councilor Gowdy, it's 1.6 compounded. So the first year we take 1.6 of the tax levy. The next year we take 1.6% of the tax levy. So you said on top of the capital expenditures, it's really increasing the existing, yes.
So so I guess that's where my question is. So if we have this money that we're adding as well, we can use it for the like the bridge, for example, a bridge. We're going to put that money and we need to have it to do the bridge. But if there's any money left, it goes into a dedicated reserve for asset management, asset replacement.
Yeah, so this 1.6 is again compounded, and there's going to be years where we have an $8 million spend that we need to do. And I pray that we have the 4 million or 5 million at least in there, or whatever dollar amount, right? So it's a smoothing of the increase to have the money there in the times when we need it. And so when we don't need it, we can invest it. We can even just have it sitting there and gaining interest. At least it's there and it smooths out the taxation to the residents, obviously. It would go in, sorry.
Oh, so I'm sorry, I apologize. So it's dedicated. It would go into a dedicated asset reserve fund for asset management or replacement of major capital assets.
Yes, is the short answer.
Thank you.
Although that's what I understood was a little opposite to that. I think what I see is the 1.6 goes into a fund, but we still have to do our capital projects throughout the year, and that we raise in our budget for capital separate.
So
This is on top of our capital spending.
yeah, so the capital, to Madam Mayor and Council, the capital spending will very likely not go down, but this year we may need 3 million, next year we may need 6. So we are increasing the levy for capital. It may be on a project this year, it may go into the dedicated capital reserve. Is that clear, Mud?
No, not
Okay, you go.
anyway. I'll get my head around it one day. Duncan.
So I guess, Madam Mayor, what I'm looking for is to amend the motion we have on the floor and remove the last line, understanding that our treasurer is going to be working on a financial plan and maybe bring something back in the fall when we've explored some other avenues.
We can't do that. The motion is as it is. We can defer it and have more discussion on it, or we can defeat it,
You can,
or we can carry it.
we can amend the motion to remove the last and that council accept the increase, the tax increase of 1.6%.
You can do an amendment to the motion.
That's what I'm asking. Sorry, that's what I'm
I'm
asking for.
sorry.
No, that's what I was asking
Thought you
for.
wanted me to scratch it out.
No, sorry. I'm asking for an amendment to remove the last line.
Okay. Susan, and then we'll come back to Duncan.
Through Madam Mayor, and I may be confused at reading the legislation and the regulation. But as of before July 1st, 2025, every asset management plan prepared must include levels of service and the financial strategy. Have I got that right? Okay. And it goes on to say, so it has to include a financial strategy, and which is the 1.6. And every asset management plan prepared under, and that's section 5 or 6, must be endorsed by the executive lead of the municipality and approved by a resolution passed by the municipal council. And we have to do that on or before July 1st, 2025. Now, the fact that we have 1.6 doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have a discussion at budget time. So it's not final in terms of how we approach it, but it's fine. But it's our asset management plan. And as is pointed out in the resolution, this is a living document. So we can adapt and adjust as circumstances call. So I'm not in favor of removing the 1.6. I understand why it needs to be there under the legislation. And thank you.
Right. So do you want to make an amendment?
Yes, I would like to make an amendment.
Okay, Kathy will write it.
Okay.
So you want to simply say, well, no, what are you going to say? And that council accept.
I just want to remove the last line and that council accept an increase to the tax levy of
Okay, right.
1.6%.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, if I may say, I don't believe we have a financial strategy at that point. If Councillor McGregor, if I may propose something, if we added on, and look at other ways to decrease that or whatever, but to Councillor Irwin's point, thank you. It's not cut in stone or in blood. It's saying that's our strategy. Next year when we meet for budget, we may go up 0%, we may go up 5%.
What about council consider?
It does say accept an increase.
What about consider an increase?
We could change a word.
We could change a word, then that you're not tied to it one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. If we're willing to reconsider in the fall, it's the same thing. We just put a number in there.
So Bill and Duncan, you're okay if I change it?
Yep. You good with that?
Moved by Bill, seconded by Duncan, that council received the asset management plan report and presentation by Sarah Craig from Public Sector Digest for information. And further, that council approve the asset management plan as presented, recognizing that it is a living document and will continually be revised. And that council consider an increase to the tax levy of 1.6% over the next 20 years to address the capital infrastructure gap. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. All right. That was a good compromise. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's a very dry subject and it's very hard to understand. And it just goes to tell us that this business needs a lot of money to keep it going. But all right, we got to win the lottery, folks. Big time. Does anybody want to take a 5-minute break, bathroom break? All right. This has been a long meeting so far and we're only halfway through. Okay, let's get back to business here. And we are now doing bylaw activity report. Moved by Duncan McGregor, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that council received the June 24th, 2025 bylaw enforcement and education activity report as prepared by the bylaw enforcement officer for information. Hello, Nicole.
Hello.
Any questions or comments on the report? Looks like you've been busy. That's good. Okay, no questions? Oh, Nikki or Susan?
Not a question on your report, if I may, through Madam Mayor. Obviously, you're busy. It's a question as to whether or not you would have the bandwidth to look at septic reinspection enforcement.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It's definitely something that I would be willing to take on, yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
That was easy. Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. There you go. I think one of these days we should just have you Zoom in instead of going home at 8 o'clock at night. All right. Planning reports. We have a motion moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Dan Meeks, that council received the June 2025 planning activity report as prepared by the planning service assistant for information. Any discussions or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Carried. That's it for you, Abigail. Got
I'm
another?
gonna fill in for Jody, so I'm gonna stay right here.
All right. Okay. We have a motion moved by Susan Irwin, seconded by Dan Meeks, that council received the June 2025 administrative activity report as presented by the chief administrative officer / clerk for information. Any questions or comments on Kathy's report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Moved by Dan Meeks, seconded by Susan Irwin, that council received the 2025 OCA conference report as prepared by the planning service assistant for information. Looks like it was a good conference. Learned lots.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It was a fantastic conference, and one comment that I have for council and one thing that I noticed there was a large amount of committee members present at the conference. And I think if any member of council were interested in going to the conference, I sat in on a few sessions that were directed to the committee members, and they were very, very informative. So I would highly recommend if any member of council wanted to go, that is a great conference to attend. Very educational.
Good. I did go once and it was a very good conference. Okay, all those in favor of the report? Okay. Next is the outdoor show, moved by Bill, seconded by Susan. The council received the Ottawa Outdoor Adventure Show report as presented by the Community Service Coordinator for information and for the council support the Economic Development Committee in exploring and participating in additional trade shows and conferences to help advance economic development in the township. Discussion? Duncan.
Yes, I was just wondering if Chris would be able to speak on how the show went and if he feels it's going to benefit the community moving forward.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it was a good show. It was for the first kind of attempt at going. It was I learned a lot about kind of what it's like to be at a show of this style. Representing the township as a solo person, it was kind of a bit difficult to kind of do everything. I couldn't really leave the booth, which was kind of a problem sometimes. But overall, I think that it was pretty informative in terms of what people were asking me. It was a lot of focus on the trail. It was basically like the key thing that people wanted to know about when they approached the booth, or they just wanted to tell me that they kind of knew about the area or didn't know about the area. But yeah, so I think overall a pretty big success for a first time, but there's stuff I could improve on for sure, and maybe
Good.
partnering with other, maybe North or the county.
Or something.
Good. Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thanks, Chris. All right. Moved by Dan, seconded by Cindy, that council establish an ad hoc committee for the 2025 season to plan and carry out a volunteer appreciation event, and that committee structure be composed of 2 members of council along with 3 members of staff. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Now the next is to name those folks. And there's no mover and no seconder. So who would like to be nominated as a member of the Volunteer Appreciation Committee? Susan?
I don't want to nominate myself.
You can nominate yourself for this.
No, I'm not, because I know Duncan has been very enthusiastic about this, so I'm going to nominate Duncan. And I'd also like to nominate Lynn Clagus as the other member. And Duncan assures me that he has some familiarity with Olden and Hinchinbrook, as well as obviously Oso.
Okay.
And Arden would be represented by Lynn, and she also has some experience with the other districts through her work on the Economic Development Committee, and of course, sitting as a councillor.
Are there any other people that want to vie for these positions?
So we put moved by
Okay.
Susan then.
So moved by Susan, seconded by Cindy. Cindy, you're going to second this? Sure. That Duncan be appointed as a member of the Volunteer Appreciation Committee. All those in favor? Carried. And moved by Bill and seconded by Nikki, that Lynn be nominated as a member of the Volunteer Appreciation Committee. All those in favor? Carried. And appointments, so moved by Dan and seconded by Lynn, no, Susan. Who's left? That Duncan and Lynn be appointed to the 2025 Volunteer Appreciation Committee. All those in favor? Carried. All right, that's done. Now, moved by Bill Everett, second by Dan Meeks, that council receive the report entitled Committees of Council Policy as presented by the CO clerk for information, and further that members of council submit their feedback on the policy to the deputy clerk by July 22nd, 2025. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn, that council received the draft accountability and transparency policy and public notice policy report as presented by the CO clerk for information, and for the council instructs staff to bring forward the final drafts of the policies and associated bylaws for adoption at the July 8th, 2025 meeting. Discussion? Duncan?
As per the report, I'd like to make an amendment to add the statement and that council instructs CAO clerk to implement a monthly advertisement in the Frontenac News to provide regular updates and keep residents informed on the township activities.
So that's another motion.
Here's one right here. This is amending motion right here. This might be the one. There's amending motion already there.
Okay,
You were still go down that route.
So
About the when I thought maybe.
let's vote on this one first.
Yeah.
And then you do yours.
It's the same motion.
Oh, it is? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's an amendment.
Okay.
It's the same motion. Yep.
Okay, so you need to sign it.
Yep. Please. Then we can talk. Costs.
Yeah, the cost is.
We'd ask for the, sorry, you mentioned cost. We'd ask for that to be included in the budget
For 2026,
for 2025.
the budget's done.
And we asked for it to be included in the budget of 2025.
Oh, it's in the budget.
It's in the
Okay.
budget.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, okay, that one's going first, then this one.
Go.
Does this one replace this one? Or just This is the amendment.
That's the amendment to the.
Okay, so we have an amendment moved by Duncan and seconded by Susan. The council received the draft accountability and transparency policy and public notice policy report as presented by the CAO clerk for information, and that council instructs the CAO clerk to implement a monthly advertisement in Frontenac News to provide regular updates and keep residents informed of township activities. And further, that council instructs staff to bring forward the final drafts of the policies and associated bylaws for adoption at the July 8th, 2025 meeting. So it does replace this motion. Okay, so we'll just put a line through that. All right. All those discussions.
A couple things in regards to the advertisement. This had been done a number of years ago. We did a monthly, same as what South Frontenac did. And it got to the point that there was not enough information, not enough staff to be able to provide information to go forward and for the costing of the advertisement in the Frontenac News. It's certainly, we can try it with council and then bring back what it did cost. Did it help, or did we not get enough information? Because that's what we found a number of years ago. I think, Abby, you've got the costs so far there from the Frontenac News, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to council. So we did speak with Michael earlier today about what's been budgeted for advertisements in the Frontenac News. And I believe we have almost spent the budget that was allowed for in 2025 already. The additional, I guess, maybe under projected potentially. But the additional cost for this advertisement, depending on the size of insertion in the paper, would be for a quarter page in color, $274.40, and for a half page in color, it would be $524.16. So for the 5 months left of the year, the half page insertion would be $2,625. And for the quarter page, it would be $1,375.
Are you looking for something similar to what South Frontenac does?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm looking for something South Frontenac does. I kind of disagree it's going to be an increase because we run something in the Frontenac News almost every week anyways. So that could be included in our quarter page ad. Like if we had a job posting or if we were doing something anyway. So it's not an increase. It's just changing to a more standard format. And so every month, taxpayers knew to look in the Frontenac News to look for that quarter page ad and look in one spot for all this information. And it's been a resounding conversation with taxpayers that they want this. They want it in the paper. They want more involvement. So I think we'll be able to find, with all the work we're doing in the municipality, lots of things to put in that quarter page ad, and I don't see an increase in our budget.
I guess the question is the staff to do it. If everybody knows they have a deadline to bring stuff in and gets in, but then who's going to collate it and make sure it gets in? It's another time job. Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So two things to follow up to what you just said. If you have a template and you know that, for example, you're having a bridge replaced, the manager, all he has to do is just to do a blurb and shoot it off, and then it goes into the template, and the template gets sent every month. I know people's time's tight, but I don't think something as simple as just putting in that the bridge is going to be closed on the 21st or whatever it was, and it's going to be lifted as a lot. But I do respect people's time. My second question is, how could we have used up the budget already? Because it was a big discussion at budget time that we wanted this half page or quarter page ad, and we budgeted for that money. So I know we do other advertising. I understand that. And we also budget for that. I don't understand. I need clarity on how that budget item got used up, and we haven't even put one insertion in.
We'd have to ask Michael.
Michael could tell us that.
Yeah.
But if you're hiring students or any hirings or road closings, would all be under advertising, I would think. Maybe it just hasn't been allocated. Nick, or
We have had an increase of like zoning bylaw amendments, road closings, all of those things, holding lifts, all of those things require public advertisement in the newspaper. Just as a little bit of a comparison, so far this year, we've advertised for for zoning bylaw amendments as compared to last year. In all of 2024, we had one. So each of those advertisements is around a couple $100 a piece. So it's just, I don't know, again, where it's at budget-wise. That would be something that Michael would be able to speak to, but we have had an increased amount of insertions in the newspaper over last year.
Okay. Duncan.
So last thing I'll say, so first question is that not on a cost recovery basis? So when someone applies for a zoning bylaw change, they pay a fee and the advertisement will come out of that fee? So if we had 1,000 in a year, it shouldn't impact it because our revenue increases?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't honestly, like, I know that planning fees cover the cost recovery, as you said. And maybe it's where it's being applied in the general ledger, and that's why it's showing up that way. Again, I can't speak much to what's been budgeted for. I'd leave that up to Michael's expertise, but he did say that we have used a good percentage of what was allotted in the 2025 budget.
Anyway, and then regardless, I think we need to try it out, so.
Okay. All right. Okay, so calling the question, all those in favor? Carried. All right. Moving on. So we did that one. Now we are at, oh, my glasses here. Moved by Lynn, seconded by Duncan, that council received the report titled Request for Additional Staffing Public Works Department as submitted by the Public Works Manager for information, and that council approved the addition of 2 full-time positions to the Public Works Department to enhance operation capacity, optimize use of township assets, and support long-term sustainability of the department. Welcome, Steve. We left you to the end. Okay, questions or comments for Steve? I think it makes sense. If you've got the equipment, but you don't have the workers, you need to put the 2 together. Bill?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My only question is, which 45% of Steve Litchie's report are you?
I'm not sure where I fit in there really, but probably not sure.
Okay. So people support this? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. There we go. Get some work done. Committee and other reports, communications or action, none, bylaw agreements. Bylaw to close, declare surplus and sell part of a highway. Moved by Bill Everett, second by Cindy Kelsey, that bylaw 2025-29 being a bylaw to permanently close, declare surplus and sell part of a highway be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 24th day of June, 2025. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Notice of motion. I'm going to read this, and Councillor Meeks has requested that it be deferred until July the 8th. So we need a seconder of the motion. I'll read it, and then you can decide if you want to second it. So it's moved by Dan. Whereas there is ongoing interest among landowners in Central Frontenac Township in pursuing additional severances beyond what is currently permitted under the official plan. Whereas the current policies limiting severances restrict opportunities for rural development and land use flexibility, and whereas the limited number of lots currently available for development contributes to increasing land prices, making the existing lots unaffordable for many and rendering new development financially unfeasible, and whereas allowing additional severances could support the creation of more housing options which align with the current housing priorities of both the Ontario provincial government and the federal government of Canada, who has emphasized the need to increase the housing supplies across all regions. And whereas an official plan amendment would be required to consider changes to the township severance policy, and such an amendment should be supported by appropriate planning analysis. And whereas the severance policies in the current official plan do not include a time-based, predictable mechanism for limited development while preserving the rural character and intent of the official plan. Be it resolved that council directs staff to prepare and issue a request for proposal seeking proposals from qualified planning consultants to assess and justify a potential amendment to the township's official plan to increase the number of permitted lot severances in all zones. Be it further resolved that the RFP include a request for detailed cost estimates and deliverables as part of the proposal for council's consideration prior to any decision to proceed with awarding a contract. Okay, so Dan?
Now, with this motion, Madam Mayor, there is a delegation that the council should be aware of and get to hear before we do make a decision on this motion. So they're deferred till July the 8th. So
Okay.
that's why I'm deferring it tonight.
Okay, so do we have a seconder for the motion? Nikki? Okay, so all those in favor of deferral? Carried. All right, that was a long one. Any giving of notice of motions?
No, there's not.
Any new or other business?
No.
We're going to go into closed session, moved by Susan Irwin, seconded by Bill Everett. The council resolved into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to discuss A, 239B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board members. B, 239(2)K, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or behalf of the municipality or local board. C, 239(2), C, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. D, 239(2)F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And E, 239(2)C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. All those in favor? Carried. This is going to